Welcome back to another episode of the 2 Dates and a Dash podcast. I'm your host, Matt Cubbler. On today's episode, I interview former NFL lineman and current keynote speaker, Shawn Harper. Now sit back and relax and enjoy this episode of the 2 Dates and a Dash podcast. What is up, podcast land? Welcome to another episode of the 2 Dates and a Dash podcast. I'm your host, Matt Cubbler. Before I introduce Shawn Harper, you guys are going to love his story. The dude is a keynote speaker, but before that, he was in the NFL. He played NFL Europe. He's a former Division I college football player. He's got a lot of things going on, a lot of things to share that I think are going to be beneficial to all of us. But before we do that, where can you hear the podcast? Pretty much anywhere podcasts are heard. iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, iHeart, Pandora, you name it. That's where you can find the audio version of 2 Dates and a Dash podcast. All I ask is that you hit the automatic download and then also subscribe. What else? Where can you learn more about me, Matt Cubbler? You can go to mattcubbler.com, learn more about my career, things I've done in my life. You can get a copy of the book I wrote 15 years ago called A Brother's Love, a Memoir, which is the single greatest accomplishment in my life. It's my life story growing up with my brother Andy, who was autistic and had a severe stutter and sadly was killed in a car accident in 1989. It shared our life story together and then how his death impacted my life and how I was able to overcome that tragedy and turn that into a positive that then turned me into who I am today. So without my brother's death, the person you see before you would not be who he is. And while it is the saddest day of my life, it is also one of the days I'm most thankful for because he gave me a little bit more clarity in my life and vision and purpose. So once again, if you want to learn more about me and my book, go to mattcubbler.com. All right, without further ado, my man Shawn, how are you?
Good, I'm doing wonderful. How are you?
I'm fantastic. First of all, that is the dopest backdrop I've had on any show yet today.
Thank you.
I thought mine was pretty cool with all the jerseys and stuff. You know, I got quite a few back there.
Yeah.
People I can see. People I've done security for.
Yeah.
Things like that. But I don't have a stadium that I played in as my backdrop. How are you? Tell me what's going on in Ohio.
You know what? Nothing much. Well, yeah, just a lot of stuff going on here. Just trying to, find the center. And there's a lot of, discombobulation and things like that going on. And I'm just learning more each day that I can only control what's happening with myself, and I can just become more grounded and more rooted, and win from the inside out, and just live a life from transformation versus innovation.
I think there's something really important in there that the controlling the controllables. You know, we spend a lot of time absorbing the noise around us,
Right.
and for whatever reason, it's like a moth to a flame. We can't stop ourselves sometimes.
No.
And the reality is if we stay centered and we stay grounded and we stay connected to those around us that are providing value, I think that's when you really begin to get that clarity of purpose. And even in the most chaotic of times, as a police officer, I've been in several life or death situations and 4 years prior to that in the military. I can tell you that in the most chaotic of environments, I become the most calm.
Yes.
And most focused. And I think as an athlete, you probably had similar type reactions when you have a whole stadium, fourth quarter, 2 minutes left, down 7, driving down the field. It's that you become like everything gets quiet around you, and all you're hearing is the calls from the quarterback or your center calling the line play. Is that about accurate, if I'm guessing?
It is, but to be honest, that comes with training, to learn how to center yourself and learn how to block things out. One of the things I've often would say is that if you change your focus, you can change your life. If you can maintain your focus, you can win. That is the key. And I remember watching a boxer, probably one of the most strategic moves ever, and that was Muhammad Ali in his infamous rope-a-dope.
Yep.
and how he knew he was basically outmatched. He knew that he was outmatched, and he knew that his home was in the middle of the ring. So what he strategically did is that he moved up against the ropes for support. So the ropes would help absorb some of the blows, because it was reported that George Foreman could shift your bones. He hit that hard. But it was interesting because he took a lot of blows to the body, but he protected his face. And he went, I think, 6 or 7 rounds protecting his face, taking on the body, letting all the body blows happen. But he was watching, he was feeling, waiting on his blows to get a little softer, watching his breathing, watching the eyes, each round, just watching and watching. And at the 7th round, the right moment, he let out a fury, maybe like 3 or 4 shots, and put him on the mat, did not get back up. And I believe that sometimes you throw jabs, sometimes you throw haymakers, and sometimes you rope a dope.
That's and for the record, people, we've never spoken, Shawn and I. So this we met 11 minutes ago.
Yeah.
So we don't know anything about each other. I know his bio in generality. He knows very little about me, but boxing is my background. So 30 years.
Oh, okay. Okay. Sweet. Okay.
I've managed and trained 2 world champions.
Wow.
And so when you brought up Muhammad Ali, you're in my wheelhouse. So
Yeah.
People don't understand that when you get hit, there's 2 things that are going to happen. One, you're either going to have the muscular. Well, first, we're going to have the balance as your base. Then you're going to have the muscular strength and ability to absorb, or you're going to get knocked on your ass. And when you're on the ropes, what it does is when you get hit, it allows your body to move with the punch into the ropes, so that energy dispersion happens, so that it's not hitting you and then driving through your entire body as a static object. So that's one of the greatest things about understanding what Muhammad Ali did in that fight. It wasn't him being coy or being unwilling to fight. It 100% was a strategic, planned event, understanding the biomechanics of the human body and how it absorbs energy.
Yeah, it was absolutely genius, because he's a winner. And the thing about life is that there's always a way to win. If it's a game, there's always a way to win. And he always looked for opportunities to win, whether he was faking the fact that he was learning how to throw jabs underwater just to get on Time magazine, just everything that he did was a strategic move to win. He won out of the ring. He won in the ring. It's just absolutely amazing.
Well, one of my favorite, actually my favorite boxer of all time is Irish Mickey Ward, who the movie The Fighter was after, with Mark Wahlberg. Played his life story in the movie. He had 3 amazing fights with Arturo Gatti that were done in like 14 months, and it was called the Trilogy. And the first fight, round 9, is probably the greatest round of boxing I've ever saw, other than maybe round 1 of Hearns.
Cubbler. Yeah.
Those were they're 1 and 1A to me. And round 9 of Mickey Ward and Arturo Gatti is what I enjoy about boxing, is that warrior mindset, that mano a mano, that we're just going to beat the piss out of each other and see who ends up standing at that. And then when we're done, we're going to respect each other. And I had him on my podcast, and hearing that thick Boston accent recount those 3 matches was one of the greatest joys of my podcasting career. And when you understand the difference between Mickey Ward style was to absorb as many punches badly, like the shock. He has CTE now, which is a shame, but it's a byproduct of the fact that the concussive nature of energy moving through the body, whether it's a body shot or a shot to the brain, is a cumulative effect of negativity. So what Muhammad Ali did was survive 7 rounds with King Kong, essentially, who was literally just dropping bombs.
Yes.
And he didn't have much boxing skill, but he had the power of a savage. And Muhammad Ali said, "I'm going to survive, and then I'm going to win." And I think that's the difference between 2 boxers, both who I find brilliant. One for his heart, the other one for his mind and his skill set. But I just, boxing is like my geek sport, man. So you
Oh,
teed me up really well. So I appreciate that.
wow.
All right, I'm sure you don't know this, but I gave you a little heads up ahead of time. I asked one question, and the rest of the show I pretty much wing. That's just the way I'm built. I don't have a whole lot of um, mental aptitude for planning things like this, and I truly do understand the value of authentic interaction. And the more authentic I can make it by not knowing as much about you as maybe I could have, makes it better for the listener and the watcher of the video to see two people getting to know one another in a really intimate environment. So I asked one question, and that one question is the same for everybody. Who is Shawn Harper?
Shawn Harper's a winner, period. I have come to the evolution of the fact that I am a physical, mental, spiritual winner, and I see life as a game. And if life is the game, I'm going to play the game to win. It wasn't always like that for me. Had tons of struggles and setbacks, but it kind of led me to this metamorphosis, transformation, meaning the inside out of who I really am. And your perspective is everything. So let me give you an example. If you're on a roller coaster 300 feet in the air and you're looking down 300 feet down at a and you're about to take this ride, and if you know that that is just a ride, you're going to be scared. You're going to scream, but you're going to enjoy it a little bit too. If you're 300 feet in the air and you don't know that it's a ride and they're just hanging you from a crane, that's a different type of fear. The reason your perspective is everything, because your perspective is your launching point. Unfortunately, a lot of people, their launching point is defective, it's broken, it's sabotaged. So whatever they have tried to accomplish or do accomplish, their self-concept will bring them all the way back to failure, because that's who they see themselves. They see themselves as a failure. And so I had to change the crux or the essence of who I am. I am a winner. So that's it. That's who Shawn Harper is.
I love the concept of winning, because I think there's a fear amongst today's society to talk about um, competition, to talk about winning and losing, to talk about the essence of why do we do a lot of the things that we do in life, right? Success is an interpretation of winning, and it's not necessarily always determined on whether there's not always a win or loss component to it, but there's always a internal win or loss, whether or not you put out the effort and were able to achieve your goal. That's winning. And I think for me, I, it resonates with me when you said winner, because I think the self-confidence that's required to identify as that is not something that is readily out there in the world right now. I think we're missing that key winner mindset.
Yeah, I think that, and this is my skewered view of life, but I think that the word success is a man-made construct, because success is not static, which means that I can have $20 million in Columbus, Ohio, I'm doing good. I can have $20 million on Manhattan Island and you're all right. $20 million in Dubai, I'm poor.
Right.
It's success is external based, winning is inside out based. Okay, and that's huge. We are, as I mentioned, we are genetically created to win, plain and simple. Plain and simple, which is why sports are your shirt specter. Sports is a multi-billion-dollar industry, because why? It resonates with our DNA. Gambling is a multi-billion-dollar industry. Why? Because it resonates with our DNA. When I go to the airport and fly into Vegas, or I may stay at a casino, there's certain little rooms and people are all there gambling, and then there's the back room where people don't see. Then there's like $1 million chips, and these guys are billionaires. These guys are millionaires. Why are they still playing? They're already successful. No, because they want to win. That thirst and that taste and that drive to win, it is embedded in our code. Where does it come from? You're 1 to 2 to 3 million sperm cells. You were the one that fertilized the egg. You were born. You are a born winner. Plain and simple. In the discussion. The games that we played when we were growing up, they were win-lose games. Hide and seek is win-lose. Okay, it's just plain and simple. That is congruent of every follicle in your body recognizes and resonates with the winner and winning. Around the third or fourth grade, however, about the time you find out that Santa Claus is not real, you're introduced to another concept, and that concept's called success. Now they've taken you off of that, they perverted it, and now you're still moving towards it, or you're moving in the win, but it's been hijacked. Now it's called success. And now they're telling you the rules of this new game. To be successful, you have to live in a certain subdivision. To be successful, you have to make so much money. You have to be of a certain color. You have to have, certain this, and this is how you are successful. And it's crazy because the win is the fullest expression of who you are mentally, socially, physically, economically, and most importantly, legacy. But that's stripped away in the success model. And now you're created to produce, not reproduce.
Well, now that takes me to another spot, because I know, just based on what you just said, I can only imagine, and like I said, I don't do a whole lot of research on people, but I know you do a lot of business coaching and keynote speaking, and you go to work for companies and help them improve whatever they're lacking in their company. Is that the basis of your philosophical approach to helping people, is reinvigorating that winner mindset and understanding the difference between the fabricated success mindset that's been created throughout our lives, probably not at our desire or wishes, but getting back to that more primal winner mindset?
Yeah, I kind of tripped on it when I was playing football as well. There were certain players where you know what, they just got it. This confidence is exuding from them that these guys are going to win. And I'm like, man, and it's weird because she's going to be around that person. Like, they got the it factor. They call it the it, but it's like that's the winner's gene. They have it. We were talking about earlier where there's, the difference between a great competitor and a winner. And there are certain players like Brett Favre. These guys are winners, and winners always makes people around them, they just rise to that level because it exudes, that energy exudes from them. Years ago, a guy wrote a book, and I got a hold of it, but it was a long time ago, like in the 50s, 60s. Maxwell Maltz wrote a book called Psycho-Cybernetics. And what he talked about is he introduced the self-concept ideology. And so all actions stem from thoughts. All thoughts are from your belief. And that's where most people stop at. If you believe to achieve, but there's one step deeper. There are two steps actually, but I'm just going to talk about one. The deeper is your self-concept, the essence of who you are. Who are you? Period. Because you will always manifest who you are. You'll never get what you expect. You'll always get what you are, because it exudes like Wi-Fi. There's like, you ever wonder why keep being caught in the same cycles, in the same relationships, in the same circumstances, is because your self-concept is exuding from you. Remember when I was in Juneau, Alaska, right? And I was at this hatchery. This is crazy. I'm at this hatchery, and they have like millions and millions of salmon in these big dromes, right? And they're feeding the salmon, and they get so big, and then they took it out to like this bay, and there was like a tugboat and another boat, and this boat just drove in a circle for like hours. Like, what is this thing? And I talked to the guy, like, man, what's this guy doing? I said, this guy's drunk, man. He said, no. He said, they are marking the salmon. He said, what's going to happen is that they're going to release the salmon, and they're going to swim all over the world. They're going to swim every year, everywhere. In about 2 years or a year, whatever later, they're all going to swim back to this very spot because the salmon have been marked. And then they're going to drop the nets, and they're going to catch them, and they're going to call it wild caught salmon. And I'm like, wow. So some of us have been marked with failure. Like I had, I was documented with 4 to 5 learning disabilities. I was kicked out of 2 schools because of disciplinary reasons. I repeated the first grade. I stuttered my entire life. I couldn't complete a sentence till college. Voted most likely to fail, 9 on my ACT, barely started in high school football. I wasn't even honorable mention all conference. I wasn't even honorable mention all conference coming out of high school. And I go off to a junior college in Mason City, Iowa, between two cornfields, 26,000 blonde hair, blue eyes. Everyone's last name is Schneider, right? And in the first year at that junior college, I sit the bench the entire season. And I had a life-changing conversation at the end of that year. I said, Shawn, there's no way you can be successful. I said, but you can win. And once I made that shift, I began to MacGyver life. And so I begin to see things totally different and do things that winners do, because I understood winning more than I understood success. And that's where it was birthed from, the winning concept and the winning mindset and mind shift.
So then you left, but you ended up at Indiana, correct?
Yeah, I went to a junior college first.
Yep.
Then, because I didn't have the grades. And then from there, I went to IU Bloomington.
Did you, when you clearly you had some modicum of success while you were in Division I football, and
Yes.
you found yourself getting drafted in the fourth round by the Rams.
Yes, I went to IU, and you know what? I started the process all over again. I went to this 4-year school, and the first year they wanted me to put me on defense. Didn't work. They redshirted me, and I'm grabbing the towels, for all the starters. Guys are murmuring, complaining, like, why is he here? He sucks. And you know what? I think from the time I got to IU to the time I graduated, I went back home a total of maybe 20 days. I stayed on IU's campus and I trained day in and day out, because that's what winners do. And I developed that winning mindset, and it carried me from, coming in as a red shirt to third pick in the fourth round, I think. Yeah.
So you talk about this winner's mindset, and
Yeah.
and it's a to many people that's just a phrase, right? Like what the hell does that mean? What is the winner's mindset? What did you, when you were in junior college, community college, whatever it is you want to call it, what was you had that transformational moment, but what was the beginning of the process when you said, okay, I'm going to be a winner? What were the steps that you took? Because I can tell you, I had a very similar type revelation in my life.
Yeah.
And I had to take certain steps that then became my repeatable steps that I used in many, many, many other facets of my life. What were yours?
Great. So school let out late April of that year. And within a month, I was, wow. Within a month, I was back on the Greyhound, back up to Mason City, Iowa training. And I stayed in Mason City, Iowa from May 8th to May 9th by myself in a dorm room. I took summer courses and I trained twice a day. And from May, June, July, August, for 4 months, I trained and I trained and I studied and I trained and I mastered. I went from having some of the worst feet, some of the best feet in 4 months, because I did maybe like 2,000 or 3,000 skips a day. Okay, jump on 1 foot at a time. I'm just training because I'm flat-footed, right? I was training like there was nobody's business. That's the first thing I did. The second thing I did is that, I developed, these like laws, right? Okay. And so the law of averages. And so there's like 500 junior college linemen coming out the same time trying to get a Division I scholarship. They're only going to give you a scholarship if they need you. Out of high school, they'll just give you a scholarship because you're good. But JC, they have to need you. So I said, okay, I'm going to separate myself. I'm going to graduate within 1 semester of today. And so I took 22 hours in 1 semester, and I was able to get my associate's degree in a year and a half. And by doing that, it made me more marketable. Then I put out a sheet of paper and I wrote 200 Division I schools, or 200 schools, Division I, 1A schools. Actually, I wrote one letter, I Xeroxed it, and I signed them like 150, 200 times, right? And I put it in there, and I'm activating laws of capacity. I'm just creating that, and I sent it off to junior colleges. D1 and D1A schools all throughout the country, and the phone began to ring. Send us films. I'm like, it's happening. And then when I got on the field, I was a monster. Before practice, I practiced. During practice, I practiced. After practice, I practiced. And I went from basically not even stepping on the field first year to being in the Junior College Hall of Fame the second year.
That's, for everybody that's listening at home, the formula for what you're accomplishing, meaning the steps you take, your own individual processes you create, are probably going to be unique in some way to each and every person. But the mindset, the belief system, the willingness, the want, that grit, that hard work, that passion, that desire to be a winner is vital. And I'll share with you a story about my daughter. My daughter's 23. She graduated college this past year. She was a swimmer, and she was a beautiful swimmer. She wasn't fast. She wasn't the best at anything, but she looked like she should be, right? She had that beautiful stroke. She just technically proficient, just didn't have the athletic component to it, which allowed her to become fast or the best. Wasn't until high school, her freshman year, where she started doing strength training with me. And she was kind of like my guinea pig. Like, I hadn't done the things with another person yet that I had learned through my business association with Mike Barwitz, who's the head of head strength coach in Michigan. And so she was my guinea pig, and she had never touched first. So in swimming, you'll have multiple heats. You have the main heat, which is the fastest, but then there's usually multiple heats of slower swimmers. And she had never even touched first in a slower heat, let alone won an overall race. By halfway through her freshman year of high school, she won her first race. By the time she graduated high school, she was a two-time state finalist, medaled her junior and senior year, was offered a couple of Division I scholarships, chose to go Division II, ended up a six-time NCAA All-American, four-time NCAA Academic All-American, and the single greatest swimmer in the history of her school. And that came about by putting in processes, winner mindset processes. And a lot of them she did on her own. She would put sticky notes on a corkboard in her bedroom, and each sticky note had a time, a goal, or whatever. And there was probably 50, 60 every year on there. And when she would achieve one, she'd take it off, put it in a box. And she had every practice she ever had. So in swimming, you'll do sets of this, that, or the other for different strokes. And she would write down every one of her practices. And when she didn't achieve a goal, she would go back and review her practices and her meets and see where she was deficient, and then make adjustments to those things every year to get to the point where she was a six-time All-American.
Wow.
Those processes, different than your processes, but still the same mindset, winner, want, desire, that inner grit that lived in her that needed to be brought out. And I think giving her that foundation of strength, of understanding how to control something, we talked about in the very beginning, controlling those controllables. Well, one thing she could control was her strength and her cardiovascular and her physical skills that she could work on, technical things like jumping on one foot to get your feet faster, right? So those are all things that she did and you did that are the same in order to become the best at your sport, so that no one could ever stop you from being on the field or in the pool to be your very best. Right? Because if you're never on the field, you never have that opportunity. So you had to make sure that you were never not on the field.
Right.
And I think that's one thing people need to learn when they're trying to decide, how do I become a winner? How do I embrace that mindset, that attitude? You've got to have that first step of, I've got to get on the field and never come off of it.
Yep. Yeah, it's and something that you said earlier that was profound is that whenever she performed and it wasn't her best, or there was something that was deficient, she would go back and she would review. Now, what I've learned about champions is that they have an outer game, but more importantly, they have an inner game. The inner game, okay? The inner game. I remember we were playing a particular team, and a wide receiver. He had a pretty good game. And this guy got the game ball, this, and this, and this. And I'm like, man, are you gonna go celebrate? He's like, no. He said, I'm going back to watch some film. I'm like, man, you had a great game, man. Just cool out. He said, no, I didn't have my game. And although the external components were like, good job, we won, take a load off, relax, get better. The inner game, him against himself, which is the true competitor of a winner. Or yeah, it is the true, it's you against you, pushing you into the 212. It's like, man, the inner game. On the flip side, if you had a horrible game and you know that you did your absolute best, it's like you can walk away from like, hey, you know what? I put it all out there. I left it all on the field. That's the mark of a champion. Is can you build and fortify your inner game in business, inner game in life? Because I promise you, if you keep listening and looking and waiting for external cues, it will break you. The external cues, the external confirmations will break you because they will scream Hosanna on Monday and sing crucified by Friday.
Yeah.
So you got to pull it to the inside, and you got to become that person and never leave the field with something left in you.
That's such a very valuable lesson for people to learn. I had the pleasure of being Tim Tebow's bodyguard for 4.5 years, and being around him and his family, and seeing who he is not in front of the cameras, and which is, by the way, the same person that you see in front of the cameras, which is a very rare thing. And I'm sure you know that, being a former professional athlete, that there isn't always the same authenticity in the persona as the person. And one of the things, and the reason that the show's called Two Dates and a Dash, is your life's made up of 2 days: the date you're born, the date you die, and the dash is the life that you live. And I got that from a poem called The Dash that Tim used to recite. That just resonated with me. That the life is simply, in its most rawest form, 2 dates and a dash. That's
Sure.
what ends up on your headstone, right? So what you do with that dash is completely up to you. And having that inner winner mindset, the willingness to be your hardest critic and your greatest champion inside your own heart and your brain, is really vital to it all. Who would you say in your career playing and in your life as a professional athlete, who was the single greatest winner, champion, whatever the term is you want to use, that you ever played with or was around?
Jackie Slater.
Wow.
Jackie Slater.
Great lineman.
Oh my God. I think he played like 20 years. Like, who does that?
Crazy.
Right. But I mean, I learned so many secrets and keys. I just watched this guy, right? One of the things that he would always do, which was amazing, is that the guys would come to practice. We got on sweatsuits, what we wore the night before, cologne from last night. We got the wristband from the club from last night, right? He had practice coming in, get ready for practice. Every day, Jackie would come to practice with a suit, a collared shirt, or maybe even a tie. Every single day, he would come to practice as if it was his office, shoes shined, ready to perform. And one day, either me or my brother, we asked, like, why are you doing that? And he said, because it's all business. It's business. He said, you have to have the same mindset of the owners. This is business. And life can trick you if you get the wrong perspective. You'll miss things in life if you have the wrong perspective. Like, one of the things about me is that I love God. I'm a Christian, right? And so when I read in the Bible, I'm like, the Pharisees, they were around Jesus the whole time. The person that they studied about, it was in their face, but they had the wrong expectation and the wrong perspective. It's like playing football is a perfect setup for that, because the fans have one perspective, the players have another perspective, the coach has another perspective, the GM has a perspective, and the owner has a perspective. and they're all watching the same game with different perspective or worldviews. If you
Yeah.
want to win, you better align your view up with first yourself, and to me next God. But then as you play, you need to understand the perspective or the view in the arena that you're playing in. If you are in working and you're working corporate America, you don't need to understand the perspective of your coworkers or even your managers. You need to get a hold of that fiscal report. You need to see what the C-suites are thinking. You need to think like them, because it's hard to get railroad if you know what the boss is thinking.
I totally agree with that.
Yeah.
That willingness to, we get so, the aperture gets so small in life sometimes, right? We're looking through, I was in the military and law enforcement. I've been shooting guns my entire life. On an AR-15 or an M16, they have two different apertures that you can look through. There's a bigger one and a smaller one, depending on whether or not you're shooting closer targets or farther targets. If you're always looking from that smaller aperture, you're missing things.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're not willing to look outside of the scope of that aperture, then you're going to miss opportunities. You don't become a C-level executive because you always hung out with the janitor, right? Like you can't move upward if you're not willing to first explore what upward looks like.
Yes, 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 100%. I mean, that is so accurate, and people love to be comfortable. But if you're not careful, your comfort zone will become your casket. Okay,
I like that.
Never get into a groove that is dangerous. You can be lulled to sleep, and there's nothing worse to me than being awoke and sleep at the same time.
Wow. First of all, the comfort zone, the casket. I like that. I'm stealing that if you don't mind. I like the fact that you have such a broad scope of knowledge on not only internal workings of the human body and the mind, but also business and sports and competition and winning and all those things. When you were, at some point in time, every athlete ends their career. Some it ends when they choose to. Some end because someone doesn't want them anymore. Others end because there's an injury or a reason why they can't come back. When you decided, when you no longer were a professional athlete, was it your choice or was it the choice of a team or the league, or was it an injury? What was the causation for your leaving the league?
So I had, another opportunity to maybe to play, wait a while and go to NFL Europe again and even arena and whatever. But it's time. And I think one of the secrets to life is knowing the time, is timing. You have to understand time.
Time and place.
Yeah, in fact, one of the first things they do when you're going to be interrogated is that they take away the clock. They take away the windows. Lights are on the entire time. Room is white. You're disoriented. Okay, because now there's no bearings. A casino doesn't have clocks, doesn't have windows. It's the same thing. A bank doesn't have windows, doesn't have a clock, right? And so you can get caught up in so much of life and in the game and wake up and you're 65 years old because you're in it. You're in it and you don't have a bearing. You don't have a place to where, this is my focal point. This is my, this is my reference point. You don't have a reference point. And so playing in the game, you get so caught up. And so what happened is that I was able to pull back. I met a beautiful young lady. She's my wife to this very day. And I just took a step back. I looked around and I said, okay, it's time. It's time. Step away. Step away. Very few athletes can do that. And very few athletes, however, leave the game on their own terms.
When you left, did you know, so you're taking that step back, you said, okay, I'm going to step away from football. Did you have, because I have a general rule of thumb is never be stuck, right?
Yeah.
I'm never stuck anywhere. I am the most improvising, adapting, and overcoming son of a bitch known to man. I can go anywhere. And I can make myself amazing no matter what. And
Sure.
that's an intentional decision I made 20 years ago. What was your initial plan when you decided to hang it up? And I think this guy, I have a lot of former athletes that listen to the show. What was your plan when you stepped aside from being an athlete? What was your initial plan, and did you follow through on that initial plan, or did that morph and adapt into what you are today?
So I'm a speaker, I'm a coach, love doing both, but I bought into a security firm in 1998. And so actually a little earlier. So I had partnership in it. And once I retired officially, I started working in it as part owner. In 2004, I took it over 100%. And that's what I do today, 2021. We're still grinding away, American Services and Protection out of Columbus, Ohio. We do security, unarmed, armed. We do consulting, some little consulting, and we do some, EP work here and there. And it's been an absolute blessing. It's not what I in my heart's desire, because I still want to, travel, speak in churches, speak in youth groups. I mean, you know, that's my heart. But what's been such a blessing is that ASAP, American Services and Protection, has carried us throughout this entire pandemic. It has blessed us. And had it not been for that, man, because, I've watched 90% of my speaking engagements dry up within 48 hours. Once that, hit, they were like, oh, we got to cancel, so it has been a blessing.
When you speak, I'm a one-trick pony speaker. I don't, by design.
Right.
Can talk on many different topics as an expert. I just don't have a passion to share that information in that format. I like sharing my brother's story. That's my
Sure.
brother's life, and the way that he impacted lives in my life is really the only story that for me is worthwhile getting on stage and being vulnerable and really just putting my heart out there. When you speak, first of all, did you always know that you had an affinity or desire or passion to get in front of people and share what's in your brain, or did that come through circumstance and evolution of your own mindset and understanding of business and understanding of where you fit in based on your experiences and how you can help other people?
It was an evolution. And I remember one time I was in sociology class at Indiana, and after class, this lady walked up to me in the courtyard. She stopped me, and she said, "Shawn, I need you to pay attention to people when you speak in class on Thursday. They are hanging on every word." I'm like, "What?" She said, "Yeah." I said, "All right." And I did it, and I was looking. I was like, "Wow, people stopped. They were just looking like mouth." I'm like, "Man, there's something here." And I just slowly was able to just nurture that, joining other organizations, speaking in schools and prisons and churches, and it just grew. And the NFL is great at that, and they have athletes, speak, and it was, and it just grew, and it just evolved from there. But just now, I realized something, that speaking is an absolutely amazing occupation with the right person. And because what is happening is that I'm able to articulate a collective of experiences and thoughts and energy coming out, speaking from the natural, from the spirit, from the emotional, into someone else's being. That is powerful. And I don't know why, but it just hit me just now, like, wow. And so, and that's what happened, and the rest is history.
One of the greatest joys in its limited capacity, it is one of the greatest joys I have is when I know that and it's we go back to that winner's mindset. When I know that I was able to go back, and for me it's a little bit different because I'm sharing a really personal,
Sure,
traumatic event, but I can go back in time and replay that event on stage in my brain and emotionally be at that moment when it happened.
yeah,
And when you can deliver that to somebody, authentically,
Yeah.
and then have them come out afterwards and then share their traumatic experience or their loss or their what they took from that or whatever. That is one of the greatest joys, because you know that your sacrifice of humility, your sacrifice of vulnerability empowered someone else.
Yes.
And when you can do that on a daily basis like you do, I'm sure that's like being a drug addict. Like I'm pretty sure that's what that feels like when you have that that constant high from knowing that you can impact another person's life. I mentor a lot of kids and I say, you can be a leader every day and you can impact somebody's life every single day. And no one's ever going to tell you not to do it. You can feel as good as you want by doing it, and no one's going to call you wrong for
Yeah.
feeling great.
I mean, it is a total bombardment of your hormones. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
think about it. I mean, you got you got the endorphins, you got the dopamine, you got the serotonin, you got all of these are just like a collab. Being able to help somebody else, to be a blessing to someone else. It releases that. It just so much. It all just comes out. It's like a medley, all within 2 or 3 hour span. It's like there's nothing. I don't know if there's any drug out there that could really mimic all of those at the same time.
It's a gift. And my mom's a retired English teacher, and when I decided to write my brother's story, it was by accident. It was after 13 years of depression and anger and internal destruction that something happened that forced me to have an aha moment that allowed me to sit down for 8 hours and write down all these emotional memories about my brother. I wrote for 8 straight hours. It ended up being, it was all night long. I came up 7:30 in the morning. I had 26,000 words of memories written. And I called my mom and I said, Mom, something happened last night. I feel better. I feel different. I finally understand why Andy died. I understand why God did what he did. I understand why I suffered for so long. I understand why I was so guilt ridden. I understand all those things. I said, and I wrote 26,000 words of memories about Andy. What do I do? And she said, well, you write a book. I said, Mom, I haven't, and this is no lie. At this point in time, I had only read 2 books in my entire life completely. And I was a 4.0, had a full ride to the Coast Guard Academy. I was a smart kid, but I was a bullshit artist. I wasn't an academic person. I just had a photographic memory. So I said, Mom, I've only read 2 books. It was Animal Farm and Fahrenheit 451. I said, the only 2 books I ever read in my life. Why would I write one? Like, who am I to write a book when I can't even read one? Long story short, I ended up writing one because my mom said, same thing with speakers, that everyone has a story to tell, but not everybody can tell a story. And she said, when you're able to tell a story, that is one of the most impactful, like, mediums, gifts that you have to communicate to another human being. And when you can speak professionally and share whatever that story is, whether it's a story of winning, whether it's a story of resiliency, whatever that is, when you can do that and do that well, it is a rare God-given gift. And not everybody has it.
No, no. But you know what? It's not meant for everyone to have it.
Agreed.
Some people are naturally kinetic. They're going to share the story through actions. They're going to express gratitude through actions. Sometimes they might express it through writing. Sometimes they might express it through empathy and caring. But you should express it. It should come out. It should come through in a positive light, in a positive sense. That's what winners do. Winners reproduce. Winners reproduce. Success-minded people produce. Winners reproduce.
I want to ask you one final question before we close out.
Sure.
I know you're a parent,
Yes.
and as a former, elite level athlete and clearly a winner, someone who's embraced that mindset. I know what me and my wife chose to do as far as raising our children. We had an intentional plan, blueprint on how we were going to execute creating amazing human beings that to go out and win in life. And it was an intention. It's not, there isn't a happenstance component to winning. There isn't a happenstance component to putting together a long-term plan with the outcome of winning. There has to be intention behind it. What kind of a parent are you and your wife to your children?
Wow. Wow. It's, you know what? I want And one of the things that we've done is that the foundation of our son, because we have one kid, the foundation of our son, well, number one is Christ, and number two is love. That the love in Christ be the foundation. And there are other things that, we've given him a well-rounded experience. We homeschooled him until he was in the 6th grade. Okay. So we kind of shaped and, molded that worldview and to be actually grounded in that, gave him the confidence, put it in him. This is who you are. This is where you're going. This is your life. This is your destiny. Everything else on top of that's like icing on the cake. And, of course, I'm, as a parent, I'm concerned, but, because he took a year off and he's going to go to school in the fall. He wants to play football. He's well qualified to play. He was all-state left tackle, 6'6" now. He's awesome. But I know that he's going to do okay because it happens for him under pressure. And that's when you know a person, how they respond under pressure. And I've watched him under pressure, and I watch him crumble for a half a second, then he just bows right back up and he goes after it. I'm like, you know what? He's going to be all right. He is going to be all right because it's in him. We put it in him with our words, with our action, with our love. That gave him the foundation to endure just about anything.
I love that, man. And that's a very important part of living life, especially as you get older. We're in our second half of our life here after you hit 50, and you want to have that legacy. You talked about that earlier.
Yeah.
Part of your legacy is the person that carries your name.
Yes.
And is going to go and continue to live the life that you envision for them through the intentional actions and words and deeds and love and support that you put into him over the first 18 years of his life. That's the plan, is that took root and became the foundation for who they are moving forward, so that they can then continue to share in the way that you would expect them to share with others. And then when they meet the woman of their dreams and have children and reproduce, they keep that legacy going. So I applaud you for that. Yes. Before we close out the show, where can everybody hear, learn, find out more about you?
So, okay. You can go to my website, obviously, ShawnHarper.org, Shawn with an H. You can also go to my Instagram, Shawn Harper Speaker. But, I got a treat, and I'm about to take it down in a few weeks. But if you go to ShawnHarper.co, ShawnHarper.co, you can get a free copy of my book, The Winning Edge, The Winner's Edge. And it really talks about the strategies and the laws that I use to win in life. There's rules and there's laws. You can bend rules, you can break rules, but you never break laws. And understanding the laws and working them in your favor, I tell you what, game changer. And that's what I've done, and that's what I do.
I love it. I'll make sure I put both those in the show notes for everybody, so they can click those links and take advantage of that opportunity to get a free copy of your book. I'm sure it's an amazing book and a great investment of people's time to learn more about you and what's going on in your mind, and how it's helped you've taken these laws and put them into effect, and how they've helped you become a winner in your own life.
Thank you.
All right, hang tight. Don't go anywhere. We're going to talk off air. Everybody, thank you for watching and listening to this episode of the 2 Dates and a Dash podcast. Thank you again to my guest, Shawn Harper. Once again, you can visit his website, Shawn Harper, SHAWN Harper.org, or you can go to ShawnHarper.co and get a copy of his free book, The Winning Edge. I truly do appreciate you being here, Shawn.
Thank you so much.
Everybody, God bless, take care, and go out and be kind to one another.